This is not a recruitment podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Powered by People podcast. Today we're switching it up. We don't have someone from talent on the podcast today. We have Amar Mistry, CEO of AVC Wise, FinTech platform. He's going to tell us a little bit about that. We're also joined by Ben Leeson, not Benjamin. Ben, isn't it? Ben. Yeah, I like to introduce Bill as William. So
yeah, but he likes that.
He likes William. Ben Leeson, our director of brand experience. Today we're going to be talking about career transitions, really, isn't it? The difference between corporate and startup. We've shared a bit about this previously with Ehab on the difference, but specifically from a talent perspective. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of those challenges and changes moving from corporate to startup. Let's get into it, I suppose. So, Amar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Fantastic. So I'm Amar. I'm the CEO at a business called AVC Wise. And what we do is we provide a route to being financially well for the public sector, a service that they've not experienced before. And what it's currently starting out as is education and services to provide more pensions. So there's lots of future iterations on how we can bring in new products and things, but it's an exciting journey, very, very beginning of that. And it's
so educating the average Joe on how to be better with finance.
Yeah,
in the public sector.
Yeah, in the public sector. Yeah. Okay. So you'll see a lot in the private sector where you'll get lots of quirky benefits. Yep. But in the public sector, you don't tend to get that type of thing.
Okay.
So we have a model that allows us to offer that's cost effective, and it's a really useful service. We've got over 4,000 people going through webinars this week, just educating them on the benefits to pensions and how they can top up their schemes.
Well, I mean, it's a great idea. Yeah, it's amazing and actually so important. I think our generation are terrible with pensions, right? Are actually awful. Like. My dad regularly tells me how I'm not investing enough into a pension, and I'm like, the rate comes to my pension. But,
I need money, we'll sell the yacht.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry. But yeah, it's one of those things that I do not think, people think about until they're sort of mid to late 30s, and then it's like panic stations.
I had a friend whose retirement plan was the demise of his parents. He was stacking in pets, and he's like, "Don't worry about it, because what will happen is they're gonna, when they die, look at the size of that house. This will be fine. You won't have anything left."
Yeah, see, some of us don't have that luxury. I'll just inherit debt, so I've got to figure my way out of that one first.
Yeah, but it is an issue. I mean, you see it a lot. If you're a finance professional and qualified in things myself, there's a resting assumption that you know how to do it.
Yeah.
People are like, well, you must have a pretty solid retirement plan. And I'm like, no, I'm much like everybody else.
Yeah.
My skills extend into the business. They're not.
Then you rarely look at them.
Yeah, right. It's only more recently that I've started to think, actually, what am I doing? Like, and that's for different reasons. It's more like centered around like, what are my ambitions, my goals, trying to achieve it, and that's where my retirement planning became. Not because I was sitting there going, why am I not paying into a pension?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, interesting business model. And how long have you been going?
So 4 years we've been going now. It's just been a bit of a rocket ship. It's one of these things when you sort of hit, again, good product, good service, but it as most tech businesses, it's centered around a core of people that this is what they love to do. Right? They are passionate about pensions. They've come from some of the big insurance providers where that's what they sell, but they've come into this and they're like, look, we want everybody in the public sector to be able to have access to this pension benefit, and that's where they've started and finished. So these guys have just sort of built on it and extended it, and sort of
the best products come from a genuine need, right?
Yeah.
Which there clearly is. So that's exciting. So obviously we've let a little bit out of the bag there. You're in a startup now. So And you obviously know Ben from Konica Minolta, so not so startup.
Not so startup, no. I mean, it was quite interesting at KM, right? And obviously we've had Gemma on as well, who's CPO at KM now, but we kind of matured there, I guess you could say, right? We came through the ranks together, started at a similar time, progressed through the SMT, and then obviously went out at a similar time. And that was, as Harry said, anything but a startup. Well, actually, there was the joke that it was like the world's oldest startup because we tried to reinvent the business every like couple of years.
And they've done so again since you've left, right? A few times.
Many iterations. And Gem's probably now working on like the umpteenth version.
I would say that is actually pretty smart business to be able to continue to iterate your offerings, your products, your services in order to keep up with the demand.
It's the people, the people in that place.
Like that. It's people. It is powered by people.
In KM though, they invested a lot when you and I were there into that leadership program.
Yeah,
so we joined it, and I was not necessarily a big fan of leadership. I can say it now because I've seen the value of it, but it was one of these things where it's like, really, we've got to go on this extended course, but then we were on a cohort together, and that's where Ben and I, some of the best things happen, I think. Yeah. You start to really sort of learn a bit about yourself and what your approach and what your style is. But they've been doing that ever since. So this leadership program continues. So what you do by that is you sort of feed this hunger in the next level below that. It's going, okay, your chance is coming. Like, what are you going to do here?
Yeah.
And that's what you miss, I think, sometimes in the startup world. You don't get that. People don't invest in leadership. They invest in tech. They invest in going out and finding investors. They don't sit there and go, well, actually, how do I get these people to stay? How do I involve?
So true. I think also it's, potentially even as a startup ourselves, you almost consider it a luxury to have like a leadership development program, right? Because you're sort of working and grinding away at the bottom line, and what adds value immediately to that bottom line is considered a bit of a luxury. But actually, could it be, something that's actually going to add more value in the short term than considerations on the longer term strategy?
Yeah, maybe. With that topic has been on quite a few podcasts, hasn't it? Like, I think from the startup mentality is obviously focus on that revenue. Like, we have to hit X amount of number to go through our next round, or we have to hit this to reduce our burn rate, and we can go for like 6 months rather than 12 or whatever. But I think it is quite short sighted, because the investment in talent and a good leadership program ultimately is going to impact that revenue and that bottom line much more, and in a more sustainable way, rather than looking at sporadic things to kind of bump up revenue. Like, businesses are powered by people, so the investment in people is never going to be a bad one, is it? When you've got the right people.
But I think in the startup dynamic, it gets a little bit twisted, because you've got investors that are not necessarily invested in the whole team. They might invest in the founders, and if the founders are really important, and they might sort of insist those founders go on training and have mentors and so on. The rest of the team is interchangeable. You get some VCs that are different.
This is true, actually. Yeah.
So that perspective is the tech is the IP. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then when you get into the people side, you don't have. It's not a tangible return. It's a bit like actually when somebody tells you to go and meditate, you can't go and meditate for 10 minutes and then all your issues be resolved. It's
so
like
true.
It's a practice that runs over many years, and then all of a sudden you're like, I just feel a bit better today.
Yeah.
But you can't. You wouldn't even necessarily think that it came from meditation. Leadership is the same, isn't it? Like, maybe something happened because your leadership team were better informed. Maybe it was just luck. Maybe it was your tech. It's not.
I've 100% done this as well, where I'm like having a shit week, and then I'm like, right, everyone says meditation's good for you. You give it 5 minutes, but is it better?
Yeah. Go and sit in the dark on your own for 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. No, it doesn't quite work like that.
It's like the well-being stuff, isn't it? When somebody's like, invest in your well-being. It's like, well, when are you well-being? Like, that's right. I've done all these things. I've ticked all these boxes, but
I'm well-being.
It's really true, actually. But and that, I guess, development of people and development of leadership and stuff, it can't be so enforced top down, right? There has to be a desire for it to grow bottom up. The same as we talk about culture in that way quite a lot. You can't, and going into a new role or in the big chair, obviously you've got an idea of how you want to impact that culture, but you can't go in with an iron fist and say, this is how I'm doing it, this is how I want the culture to be. You can plant the seeds and you can put a framework in, but you need that culture to develop and grow quite organically, right? And I guess it's the same with leaders and development, you can't force development on people. There needs to be an intrinsic want or a desire or a need to develop.
Yeah.
Like,
I do find myself conflicted on that, because going back to what I was saying about when I did the KM leadership program, I wasn't that
yeah, it's true.
I wasn't that bothered about doing it. I felt there was better places.
It's just a fun away, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. If it hadn't have been in somewhere off site, then maybe I wouldn't even have sort of been on it. But so I wasn't your typical candidate of like, yeah, I should get on that. I was more like, yeah, okay, whatever. But now when I look at people that want to go into leadership programs, I'm like, no, I want to see the desire from them. I want to see them telling me when can I look.
But you were the opposite.
And I was the opposite.
That's true.
So somebody sat there and said, no, we should get this guy on it. And maybe
Who was that? Because there's probably some lessons we could learn from that person.
Yeah.
They saw something in you.
But that's been a bit of a theme through my life, actually. I remember I worked in McDonald's years back, and I remember going in, and it's just a really funny, quirky memory going into this thing. And so at this time, as a 16-year-old, I was like, I do not want anybody seeing me on the shop floor of McDonald's. That is not happening. So I picked this McDonald's that was a drive-through outside of town. And then this guy, the floor manager, comes in and he's like going to me, so I'm on the floor and I'm like, this is terrible. And then he walks in, literally just storms past me, and he just walks backwards, turns to me, and he's like, no, this guy can't be on the floor. There's something behind his eyes that's getting him in the kitchen. That was it. I was dragged into the kitchen. I don't know what he meant.
There's something in his eyes. You've got to watch out for Amar.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, I guess there is that sort of itch with some people, isn't it?
Yeah.
They've got that sort of, they're always pushing in their own way. Like, you were always a bit like that as well.
Yeah.
And like, you're trying to sort of find other ways to fix problems or to sort of working outside of your direct remit. And I think that's a good tell, actually. If somebody is sort of pushing beyond, I talk a lot about finance people fighting against the stereotype, but if you do push beyond, then that's when you can really expand your skill set and get into more interesting, exciting roles, really.
So you've mentioned that, you've obviously come from a finance background and moved into the CEO. Your LinkedIn's got a quirky tagline. What is that?
It's how to be a finance leader but not a CFO.
What does give us some context to that?
Well, so first off, it was me trying to build a LinkedIn audience, but then I realised it was me trying to sort of find my voice, and then I started to think into what is the thing that's always bugged me. And then I realised it's when people describe me as an accountant, like right from the very beginning. I came out of university and I was like, I'm never doing finance again, and then ended up back in it for lots of different reasons. But throughout my career, it's always been like, look, it's that just because I'm an accountant doesn't mean I'm really good at maths. I'm not.
Yeah, we've all got calculators.
Right? Yeah, look, and I often walk into a meeting with it because I'm not going to run that number in my head. So I'm not really good at maths, but I'm good at joining the dots in a business and doing that with a lens of numbers. So I can look at it and go, well, if somebody's saying they want to go and launch a new business or a new product, whatever it is, I can look at that and go, well, actually, it doesn't quite stack up. Don't always know how those things come to pass. But in my mind, it forms. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't quite make sense. So, and for ages, I was sort of fighting to climb the ladder, right? I was trying to sort of get to the next step, more to try and influence to steer a business. And I've been a CFO for 3 or 4 different companies by this point, and it was just a bit dull, It's just like, it's the same thing every time I go in.
Excel.
Yeah, you hit the ceiling, you sort of start to get interested in the strategy and you're sort of pushing an opinion, but it's not your decision to make. And then I was like, look, you know what, you can influence strategy in a business, but you don't have to be a CFO. You can take those finance skills and you can go on and inform businesses in lots of different ways.
For sure. But understanding the numbers without having to be an accountant.
Yeah, you see a lot of people that sort of take MBAs and stuff like that where they've got a grounding in numbers, but they're not finance people. Same principle, really.
I think that's an interesting turn of phrase to say kind of you can influence the strategy, but through the lens of numbers.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of similarities, weirdly, between the kind of linear path in finance and probably in brand and marketing as well, because, again, you can influence strategy, but through the eyes of marketing and your customer and understanding your consumer, right? But trying to break that stereotype. A little while ago, I had like a clickbaity LinkedIn headline about kind of the person that orders the crayons for the colour and in department, because that's kind of the perception is everything has to be creative, and like I'm I can influence marketing strategically. I'm definitely not a creative, the same as you're technically not an accountant, right? So there's definitely some similarities, but I do think that the perception, and there's a lot of similarities in that growing in your finance role and the perception between a corporate and a startup, right? There's all these stereotypes that the startup is all cool and it's all about like creativity and mindful sessions and slides in the office and like you get free fruit everywhere. And a corporate all has to be shirt and tie, and it's very autocratic in that sense, or democratic rather. But again, those perceptions definitely in the businesses that you've worked in aren't really the case, are they? Or you've definitely tried to break those perceptions, right?
Yeah, and I think in Conoco, I think the challenge there was that we were in boxes. So I was in finance, you were in marketing.
Yeah.
Should we even be talking to each other?
Yeah,
that sort of...
We shared a floor for a little while. That's as much as we got.
Yeah, So it was a bit of a weird dynamic, but then, as I say, Conoco invests in that leadership program.
Yeah.
That's why we did speak, and that's how you broaden your horizons. But then in a startup, you go in, and I remember the very first early stage business I worked in. It was straight after Conoco. Yeah. So in Conoco, it was shirts, it was suit jackets, it was ties, right? That's what it was there. And then, so you can see where this is going. Right? But went and joined this startup, and it was a creative agency. And I walked into the London office in that outfit. Right? So didn't have a tie on because I was like, look, this is
it's a start. I'll have it in my pocket just in case.
But walked in, and then people literally just looked past me. And then they all thought I was the bank manager. So the auditors, or something. Yeah, it's like, what the hell is this guy? Nobody knew who I was. I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have a phone. Like, I had no way to actually start work. So I sort of walked in, and nobody even asked it. Like, a stranger walks into Conoco Minolta, you've got security coming and ask questions. I'm sat in the middle of this office, and these people are like, "You on the lunch order today?" And I'm like, "That's no way." So then it sort of evolves, and then like the owner eventually calls me from Dubai, and he's like, "We sent the stuff to Dubai by accident, so don't worry. You're over here next week." And I'm like, am I? Got a 8-month-old, a wife who's 8 months pregnant. Is like, right, to Dubai next week. And we get off to Dubai, and then I was to walk into the office, and then we're loaded up onto a bus, and we drove out to the desert, right? and so then what happens is, for a night, my wife can't get in touch with me. I've never returned back to the hotel.
You're just in the desert.
I'm just gone.
Yeah.
And that sort of, the itinerary, all that sort of stuff is just organised in a corporate. They do that, right? They tell you, this is what's going to happen, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just sort of wandering from one thing to the next.
In a startup, it's just whatever happens.
Yeah, and definitely lessons to be learned, but I don't think that's always helpful. It's fun, like, for a certain period of time, and then you get to a point...
And for a certain age range.
Yeah. I was at the right age range for that.
Yeah. If my wife now couldn't get hold of me for 30 minutes, I think I'd be in trouble. Baby's this and baby's that. And not just, I'm in the desert, I'll chat to you in a bit.
Yeah. I remember having to climb this big sand dune just to find the only spot that had reception and couldn't get reception. It's like, don't worry about it. Come on. We're getting the drinks in. Come on. It's like, oh, go on then. Let's go and do that then. But
sounds like fun to be fair.
Yeah, I think it sounds great.
It was. And actually, it's that vibe, isn't it? Startups is fun. But then sometimes you lose the sort of the hard edge of what corporates are. Like, corporates have people to answer to. Startups do. They have investors, but depending on what stage you're at, sometimes you can get away with a lot in a startup.
Yeah, I would agree. But I think the biggest, and I did obviously exactly the same, going from a corporate into the rec hub, and I think it's just the one is probably the lack of. Structure is probably not the right word, but yeah, maybe structure. I think when you're in a big corporate, it's very clear. It's super clear. And that's probably because we mentioned earlier that you have the luxury of PAs and assistants and people that are responsible for one silo, right? So that's the person that's responsible for finance.
And people that care about it.
Yeah, because that's their whole job, right? Where you go into startup world and you're wearing, it's a bit of a cliche, but you're wearing multiple hats. Like, you actually are. Like, when I joined the Rec Hub, I was looking after the marketing and the finance and the ops.
My biggest mistake.
That was our biggest mistake. Ben looking after finance.
Yeah. Well, we're Ben looking after finance now. I remember going,
how do I send it in, boy?
Yeah, so what's this X?
Yeah, it's zeros, just on it.
Can you look right on the back? It is funny how you see accountants try and use Excel for Word and PowerPoint. They try and write the whole report in Excel. It's like, guys, that's numbers. Do the image stuff over here.
I'll try convincing my FD to use Google Sheets.
Oh yeah, well, I had
Never will he ever use Google Sheets.
I have used it since, but I remember many businesses sort of digging in. I was like, look, I'm not going to Apple and I'm not using Google. Then over time I was like, actually, it's not that bad. It does work.
Apparently, the formulas just aren't at the level of Excel.
Yeah, there is some issues.
Being in Microsoft Excel is the it's the absolute top class you can get for finance currently.
It's a product to suit its need, right? But going into a startup and not having a Mac covered in stickers, you must have been shunned out the building.
But I did have. This was their way to bridge it, I guess. My laptop was an orange laptop, so it was a what was it, like an Asus laptop?
I remember the coloured Aces.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is it. So that was my way. I didn't ask for it. That's what they gave me. They're like, don't worry though, we've got you a really cool non-Apple laptop. I remember telling them though that I actually had worked in Konica. And then the problem with that, right, is that they don't sit there and go, oh, wow, what about all this fantastic knowledge that you must have from like working in such a big organisation. It's like, no, don't Konica sell printers? I was like, yeah. Oh, great, because that printer's not working. Do you remember I'm not looking at it? I was like, no, I am not the printer guy.
There were thousands of maintenance people. That weren't me. So I know corporates do get a bit of a hard time in startup world. We buzz off startups.
Yeah.
But what's the benefits of being in a corporate? Because like you mentioned one there in terms of having clarity of expectation, of role, responsibility. I mean, we talked about another in terms of actually having some amazing leadership development programs. What other sort of benefits do we think being in a corporate have for that transition to a startup world?
Well, I guess sort of picking up a bit from what you were saying actually, Ben, is that when you join a role in a corporate, like, I don't know, 80% of that role's already written, right? Because somebody's done it, and they've probably done it for many years before that, and then there was someone before that, and you've probably got a process, and you've probably got system designs and policies and all the rest of it wrapped around it. So you're not walking into a blank sheet. You're walking into, okay, you need to sit in and do that, and you've got a small scope for being flexible and doing something different. When you go into a startup, you don't have any of that. But if you've been in a corporate before, you can bring it with you. So you can go
have some ideas about what good process looks like, and
then the challenge is that I've seen people go from corporate to startup. It's all a bit about how much of it do you take and how much do you leave behind.
Yeah,
I don't want to go with
really important.
Yeah, like you don't want all of that stuff, but you do want to build out scalably, and So I think that tends to work.
I definitely failed at that a little bit with the Rec Hub when we first started. I really wanted a process, and I didn't come from a corporate, although Opus could have been considered a corporate in the recruitment world.
Yeah, there
are only a few like 500 plus sort of headcount recruitment businesses, and so it was as big as I've been in, and it was very like corporate-ish. It had lots of processes and lots of layers and all that sort of thing. So when we started at the Rec Hub, I was in my head, I was like, we need this, we need process for that. And there was like, there's 3 of us. That was like 20 people's jobs to do all of those things. So you have to then actually have some realism going, this doesn't make sense to have this process, and it actually doesn't add value for us right now. Park that to later on, and we'll add that later.
I think I would agree with that point. But at the same time, I think right since the start, we've managed our business, even when it was 4 people, as if it was a 200-person business, right? We've right from the start, we've put processes in and used systems probably that we didn't need till we were like 100 people plus. But the foundation that we've built has enabled us to then not worry so much about finance or reporting or pieces, because we know we put like the legwork in early doors to enable us to scale and to grow without having to get to 100 people and then reverse engineer everything because our processes only suit a 5-person business. So I do think at the time it probably felt like a waste of time.
Right,
it would pay dividends.
Hopefully it will pay dividends later.
Million-person org. We spent all weekend writing job descriptions for FDs and CFOs and we didn't even have one employee. But there was definitely parts of that I think have benefited our growth a lot, I think.
And some would say partially just the visualization, you know, when you're sitting there writing out job descriptions for when you're 150 people.
Yeah.
You know, you're almost, you know, some people who believe in that power of, what's it called? The law of attraction.
Yeah.
You know, you're visualizing it to that degree.
That is one of the good things you can take from a corporate, like, because actually whenever you're doing anything in the corporate, often it ends up, certainly in the functions I was in, but it ended up in some sort of board report or output of some description. It wouldn't be just a quick chat with somebody down the pub. It would be an output. But the benefits of doing that is that you think through all the other parts. So you might sit there and come up with an idea. Yeah, we can grow this to £1 million in 6 months because we're just going to do X, Y, and Z. But then when you're sitting there writing it down, you start to challenge yourself again. I don't know that that's going to work. And you're not vocalizing it. You're just writing it down.
Yep.
So that process, I think, really, really helps. But the bit that you said earlier on, actually, about when you started out with Wetcub and you were sort of laying out all the processes, I think that because I had that, but I think it comes out more of like either a nervousness or an anxiety, or like a sort of you just want to show your worth, right?
Yeah.
So you sort of come in and you're like, I just want to create and add some value.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do this now. I'm just going to get started, but. It's sort of the difference in a startup is you have time to just sit in that sort of grey zone, you know, where you're not doing anything. You're thinking that some stuff's flying through your mind, and you just need to wait for it to settle to know what you need to do next. You have that space in a startup. Yeah. In a corporate, 8% of your time is already captured, so you've got other stuff to do, and you don't have that freedom and space.
So true.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And I think going back to one of your earlier points about when we're talking about the benefits of corporates is, and you're 100% right, it's very rare that, and we're kind of generalising corporates a little bit, but it's very rare that you'll have a new role, right? So you always inherit something.
Yeah.
So I think your process and your path of development is already so laid out for you, and it's quite easy to make an immediate impact because you have a baseline that then you can improve on quite quickly, right? Or you'd hope that you'd improve on it quite quickly. When you go into a startup, and our experience of startup is obviously there's no baseline, right? So you don't really know
what good looks like.
Yeah. So you've got no point of reference. You're kind of sort of faking it till you make it a little bit and trying stuff and seeing what's going to stick. Whereas when you're going into an established corporate in an established role, that good, to your point, is very much established. The direction, the vision, there's a lot of clarity at a higher level about how you can impact that vision, albeit sometimes you are just a number, and impacting that holistic high vision is actually quite difficult. But I think for me, that was a big difference. Started day one at the Rec Hub, and I was like, shit, what do I do? Like, I've got no one's.
I don't think we helped there. We were just like, Ben, can you do everything?
Yeah,
we've got to do some recruitment. Can you do everything else?
Yeah. But that was still like, I loved it. It was a completely different challenge, but I still loved it.
I remember we were walking back once from our little office in Stamford, and Ben was like, I just don't know if I'm doing everything right. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, I've just got nothing in my calendar. He's like, I just finished at Into. He's like, my calendar was full every day with meetings, with this. I've got nothing in my calendar. I was like, yeah. Just got to figure out.
But that's it. That's the space, isn't it? You just,
exactly what you're saying. You got space to think things through.
Yeah, it's so true. I was on this podcast the other day. This guy was big on AI and some interesting stuff, right? Because he was saying he took all of his LinkedIn posts and he uploaded them into an agent, like it's an AI-driven agent. So it basically meant he had like a personal assistant that would give him the advice that he would have prescribed to somebody else. And that's an interesting model, but what he was sort of evolving it along, saying that people, I don't know that having people in a business is how this is all meant to work. And I was like, I can jive with this AI agenting, but leaders in a business, fundamentally, what they do is
innovation.
But it's like the grey area stuff. Like there is nothing exact about the human race. Like if we all knew what our purpose was in life,
so true.
It's easy. We just march forward and we get on and do it. But we spend most of our life trying to work out what it is that we want to do, and then we go, I've got 5 days or 5 years left to go and make this happen. The same is true in a business. You don't know exactly what you're trying to do. And then you've got these leaders on top of it that are going, right, okay, we need to try and put order to the chaos. So let's do that for a bit. The AI doesn't fix that because AI doesn't address all those inconsistencies within people. And then we sort of moved it on and stuff. And I was sort of saying to him, and you sort of forget what leaders have to bring magic to a business. And like processes and policies aren't magic. Like anybody can write them, but the magic is like if you go out and you find a partnership that nobody thought you could pull off, or you managed to convince somebody to join your business that should never have joined, or
you inspire a team when they're feeling shit to go and do something really special.
Yeah, so, and that's why in like startups sometimes you sort of beat yourself up for doing all this policy and process stuff. But the reality is you haven't been hired to do that. You've been hired to create that magic, and somebody saw that magic in you, and you be comfortable that it will come through at some stage.
Well, I guess that exactly goes back to the whole, we've seen them a million times, right? What's a manager and what's a leader?
Yeah.
You manage in a certain way and you implement process, but to lead, like,
it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you kind of need people to follow you in order to lead.
But also, I think in my career, I've seen that the two have been connected as one. You know, like it's a leader is a manager is a leader. And actually, I was a pretty terrible manager. Still am. But I think I'm a fairly good leader.
Ben had a free dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for the record, it's not free anymore.
But yeah, because I'm ADHD. I'm terrible with follow up. If I don't note it down, it just won't come. And then I'll randomly, me and Ben were talking about this the other day. Like we'll have loads of ideas and we'll do that, and then I'll forget about it forever, and then it'll be like it's right here. So then I'm like, right, peppering. What's going on with this? What's going where are we at with it? It's like just relax. Yeah. So, but managing is not my forte. Leading, being able to inspire, innovate, be creative. They're different things to being a manager.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Do you see the same things?
Yeah, because there's a book that I read called Traction, and it's they have this entrepreneur's operating system.
Yeah,
and you see a lot of it in small businesses, but it's really good because what it does, it covers the people issue. So it's all about right people, right seats. So is somebody the right person to have all the company values, and then are they in the right seat? Can they technically do that job?
Yeah,
it covers all the stuff around that, but then it also separates the role of the visionary, the guy that's actually just sort of looking ahead and just got some grand plans for the future, to the implementer, which is the person that actually takes all of that and then converts it into doing. And they are separate roles. And actually, I think it works in small businesses. I think that structure, there comes a point where actually it's not enough.
Yeah,
you need to grow beyond it. But early stage, I think it's a brilliant way of doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think we've definitely operated with that with our leadership team, haven't we? We've got people that are sort of because I think as a small business, you can get really focused on looking down at your feet and just trying to get through the next week, the next month, the next quarter. And without looking up and thinking, why the fuck are we doing this and where are we going? You can sort of get a little bit lost in that. It's actually really important. What do you think has been your biggest challenge moving from corporate to startup?
Well, funny enough, I didn't have any issues to get in actually, which is the normal point. I was
actually getting into a startup.
In, but I've always been fortunate with just network. Actually, they've always been around to sort of prop me into the next thing. But for me, similar to what you said, I joined and I was sort of driving in, need to create value and add value immediately, and thinking that all came out of transactional stuff. And then actually, as time goes on, your education matters, right? And I wish people had said that a bit more when I was younger, but it really does. When you're going into own and managed businesses, it's less of an issue. When you're going into VC-backed tech businesses or PE-backed tech businesses or growth businesses, the point is they want to see caliber, and your education is what sets that out. So I have struggled a bit with that. Like I sort of had a really solid run through GCSEs and A-levels, and then at university decided I was just going to kick back.
Yeah.
So probably did that for too long, and then sort of had to scramble in my final year. And then
university loan on booze, yeah?
Yeah. Walk away. There's lots of funny stories from that. But it was just
different podcast.
Different podcast. Later earlier, I think. But yeah, it was good. It helped to look back on it and go, look, actually, if I'd have just done a bit more work, because there is jobs that I missed out on because I didn't have the right education, which is sad. And then I made business personal. Like there's a story, right, where I don't know if I've ever told you this, Ben, but it's one of a scarring memory that I have from a pitch that I did once. So we had these investors. And we'd pitched to them right at the beginning of, like, this is our seed fund. We pitched to them, and they were sort of half interested, half not. And we were like, right, fine. So then walked away. And then we came back to them, and then they said to us, yes, yeah, look, we're interested. We'll stump up some cash. So we were like, great, they were going to do this, put the money in. We had the commitment, as much as you get a commitment from an investor. And then we started building a business plan on the back that we had this commitment. And then they just were reneged, they pulled out. And then we're like, crap, well, we don't have the cash to see this through. So then, like, as the leaders in the business, we're having to forego salary and things. And then we had a really neat term with this business. We hit a big uptick. And then we're like, right, they want to see us again. So I was like, look, right, these guys are old school. So I was like, I'm gonna get under their skin with this. So I went into this meeting, and it was like, every other time we've been in, it was formal. It was like, shirts, ties, suits, shoes, all that sort of stuff. So I went in with like a t-shirt, a jacket on, no tie.
You were trying to mix it up a little.
Yeah, but not because I wanted to be cool on the day, because I knew that would hurt them. And then I went into this thing, and I was like, and it was personal. I sort of was.
They pissed you off previously.
Yeah, and then the worst thing about it is that I got schooled in that meeting. This guy, I don't know, just saw me coming, because we sit down. And me knowing what I'm doing there, the first thing he said, he starts off on this rambling story about sometimes I bring people to my house, and when I do, it's an event, it's a special thing. And sometimes I go to their house, and the same thing, it's a special thing. But when I go to their house, I respect their traditions, and I'm like thinking, this is, well, let's get to the point.
Were you in their house, by the way?
Yeah. You're in their house. And then goes to me, and you turn up to this meeting, serious money, and you don't even wear a tie or shirt. And you'd think I'd know how to answer that. I didn't. I was like scrambled.
You were just sitting there like that.
Yeah, I was like, well, yeah, fair play for calling it out, but I wanted you to be secretly hurt, not overall. So now I'm sitting there like trying to sort of recover this, and then I end up walking out the meeting thinking, "God, we blew that pitch," and I never even wanted to win the pitch. It's like, man,
he owned you.
Yeah, but it was all about like, don't make it personal. Like I guarantee this guy doesn't even remember my name anymore. But he's like, it was never personal for him. It was all just about
a business decision.
If it stacks up, and we'll do it. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and we won't.
It's so true, actually. When in all forms of business, and we've got 4 shareholders in our company, and from starting that and to 4 years, nearly 5 years later, there's been lots of great stuff, lots of arguments, lots of disagreements, because sometimes in business you take it personal.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It's just simply opinions around how we move forward, and sometimes you're just looking at the figures as opposed to understanding personal or including feelings.
Plug you again, but it is the people that make it personal.
Powered by people.
Not necessarily like the interactions you're having with your shareholders or your investors, but what you represent is the people behind you. And that's where I was off balance on this, was like, you really unsettled a lot of people here. Like, the impact of them reneging wasn't just on me, it was on the rest of my leadership team.
Yeah.
The people that work for me, everyone that had to take salary cuts coming up to Christmas. All of these things.
Yeah, so it really did punch.
And I'd like to think that I'd be better at that next time, and I wouldn't take it so personally. But it's tough. It takes a lot of self-control.
100%. Yeah, that would really kill anyone. I think that's to then just walk back in there as if nothing happened would be really hard for any business.
Yeah.
But I do think, to kind of round this up, I think that taking it personally, I think also fuels like a passion.
Yeah, quite true.
If you didn't care, and there wasn't that impact, that kind of innate, deep feeling impact, you might not have been the right person to be driving that business forward anyway. Like, if you're the kind of leader that was like, "Oh, I don't care that my team had to take a pay cut at Christmas," like, such is life.
Oh, they got to work for it. Yeah, do they want to work for you?
Yeah, if that didn't bother you, for me personally, I'd be more worried if it didn't bother you. And if I was one of your guys and I knew you was going into that meeting with your vest and your flip flops on, like to fight for me and to try and right the wrongs, like those personal wrongs.
Yeah,
that would make me respect you all the more. So I completely get like the narrative of like it is just business, and we say that quite a lot, like it's not personal. But I think there should be a bit of feeling and personality. Like maybe that's, and again, maybe that's the difference between a startup and a corporate. Like I've always been passionate about the businesses I worked for and would always want to fight for the best, but I've never cared as much as I do now.
Yeah,
regardless being a shareholder or whatever.
But I think startups though don't always have that placing isn't always in the right spot. Like they don't. It's not always a big care for the people.
Yeah,
because as a founder, you're looking at your VCs or your investors, like, and you're following what they say. If they're sitting there going to you do this, because that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, of course.
They're talking about your tech. They might touch your dust on your senior leadership team, but it's not a big driving point.
Yeah.
So you're not being poked on people a lot. And so then when it comes back to the people, you're also trying to be impervious as well. Like, look, I don't care if you leave. You know, if you think you can get better than
not big and friends.
Rocket, up and do it.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to do that, sort of puffing out your chest. So you do see these things, and then that leaks into the thing we were saying earlier, where you don't then invest in the leadership team. You run if you're lucky enough to run a startup for 4 or 5 years. If you haven't invested in that team, they're not on a program of growth. You're not going to hold on to them. They're just not. Why would people stay there? You know, unless the business is a rocket ship. But even then, you're probably looking at it going, look, that person was really good when we were like 10 people, but now we're 100. We probably need somebody who's run a business at this next level, rather than if you'd have put.
We need to get Ben out of finance, basically.
Yeah. Ben needs to stop sending our invoices.
Yeah,
that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, completely agree.
So a closing tradition on our podcast, which we didn't copy from any other podcast, is that we ask the previous guest to write a question for our next guest. In the current economic climate, what value does a talent leader bring to an organisation? As a CEO, I don't know if you have a talent leader in your business. What value do you think? Do you have one, firstly?
Yeah, so we've actually got the lady that taught Ben and I to be such excellent leaders.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's our leadership coach, and actually the business has invested in leadership right from the off. It's 4 years old.
Amazing.
And there's been leadership programs running through that business throughout. And actually, so I'm newly arrived into this business, but I can see from the outset how we turnover is really low in the company.
Yep.
You go around and you talk to people, and there is a philosophy of leadership. There's an approach to help people again. There's a consistency as well that comes from investing in that. In that program, and I think that's where, like, if you're a talent manager, then what are your options? You're either going to go and bring people in, or you're going to try and
develop the ones you've got.
And I don't think it's right to say it's best to bring people in solely or just to develop internally. I think a balance fits. But so today, as things sit with the way, obviously, economy crashing and things like that, invest in your people, right? Like, put the time and energy into building these people up, show them the skills for what your business will be in the future. So when you're sitting there and you're aspiring for what you want to be in 5 years' time, you can work that backwards and go, well, that means that this person here, Ben's going to have to be a finance director.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I feel like it's going to be a really expensive transition. Crayons all around.
And then I guess going out to market, it's all about your proposition.
Yeah.
Like we were talking earlier, actually, and I've joined a few businesses now when they've been fully remote. And the hardest point about that is that you end the previous job you're in, and you're sitting at that same desk, a laptop at home.
Yeah.
And then the next day you start your brand new journey, but it's the same desk, same laptop. What makes it different?
We were literally just talking about this before the podcast started, and I've never thought about it before.
Yeah.
With more and more businesses being fully remote, you quit one job on, let's say the Friday, you're starting a new job on the Monday, and nothing changes. Yeah. If your environment is exactly the same, maybe you get a new laptop, but otherwise,
This one.
nice orange Acer. But otherwise, nothing else has changed until you meet a few people, but you're still just meeting people virtually in the same environment, in your, for some in their bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about it like that. So actually developing that onboarding, that proposition, who are we and what do we stand for, is going to be so pivotal.
Yeah, because it's so easy now to switch lanes. You could give up a job and not even tell somebody you're looking. You know? You can take interviews now during your working day and nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
You don't need to. Oh, you give me all sorts of anxiety, Amar.
Why is so-and-so set up in a suit today? You doesn't matter. Why?
You think there's no camera on usually means they're in bed. But no, they could mean they're in a full suit and they don't want to give you too much. That's too much away.
But I guess that's the big role that a good people leader or any leader in the business,
Talent leader,
can play, right? It's very quickly trying to immerse somebody in your business, your brand, your culture. And I guess that's something that used to be very easy, kind of traditional, as we said. You'll go into a new office and you'll go to your new desk and you go into a meeting room that's surrounded in branding and posters or whatever. So you feel very quickly part of that business. It's like you can tangibly see who you're working for. But when that was taken away or the shift has happened, it's been a real cultural shift for businesses to try and effectively onboard remotely. And I think that is definitely a role for leaders and people leaders to play in order to make someone feel part of a business.
It used to be like hollow, right? I remember like at Conica, it's like you'd have it on the mouse mat, so you knew where they were. But it's like, and so what? Whereas now it's a bit more.
I love how the values are defined by just they was on the mouse mat.
But like it didn't matter. Whereas now it's like those values are your company's identity, and trying to get that sort of
your North Star almost.
It's what makes you, right? So we do. This wasn't my thought process. It's just what the company always did. They do daily meetings, 15 minutes with each team. They're getting together, and everybody just goes on and says what they're doing. And I remember that they told me about this before I arrived, and I was like, it seems a bit wooden, right? But the thing that's really useful about it is like people obviously talk through what they're doing through the day, but because they've been doing it so long, they do it quickly. I'm doing this because I'm right. It's like they'll talk about it, and then you get a chance to hear that you get.
How did they get good at that? Because we've tried that so many times. It's like each person takes 30 minutes just to go through what they're doing in the day. I think it's one of those, like you said, when I was trying to create processes and blah, 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 probably out of nervousness and anxiety. I think when people are working remotely, they have a tendency to over-exaggerate what they're doing in a day because there's that, I want people to know that I'm doing stuff. I'm not sitting here at home doing fuck all. I'm doing stuff. So I'm going to tell you every little detail about my day. Yeah. But how do you get people to condense that into like a?
Well, I guess they've sort of if you're starting out with it, I guess how you might do it is you get the people that are really slick and succinct at doing it and get them to start it. Like
that's a good idea.
And starts doing it in 30 seconds, everyone's going to follow suit.
Yeah.
But AVC Wise, we've just been doing it for ever since inception, right?
So it's just become part of the culture and the DNA.
I just remember, like in remote businesses, sometimes you'd never have heard somebody's voice, right? That's a weird thing, isn't it? You work in a business as a leader, you've never heard somebody's voice.
Yeah.
So then when you hear somebody's voice, you get a little bit of an insight into that personality. Are they, like, are they outgoing? Are they a little bit more shy? You get all those sort of personal cues, don't you? Whereas this gives you that opportunity. All of a sudden you're like, and Thursday sounded a bit rough today, so ease off on that person. And I never used to do it. I used to just be like, look, it's more efficient not to sit here and just chat for 20 minutes at the start.
How many people on a meeting is too many?
Well, we have the whole company on 2 meetings a week. That's 75 people. I mean, it's you've got to do the whole hand up one people want to raise a question sort of stuff. I think 6 is about the limit.
I think so. If you're going to do those daily 15-minute stand-ups, any more than 6, it becomes a bit either too long in like what everyone's doing, or if you're having a conversation. I mean, we tried it, didn't we? And we had to change up. We used to do like an end-of-week meeting, and everyone just have a beer and have a chat. And after 10, 15 people, it was just like, this is just chaos.
Everyone's talking over each other, and then everyone goes silent because everyone's talking.
Yeah,
and everyone trying to talk. Silence. But we had that rule. I mean, it's not an original thought. We nicked it up for somebody, but that a meeting, you should be able to share a large pizza. That was the thing, wasn't it?
I think that was Amazon. Yeah. Amazon's pizza team.
A good piece actually about how they run their meetings. If you're going to run a meeting, there's a 6-page docket that you have to pull together that sets out what the issue is. A little bit like what I was saying before, like it's a report that says this is the issue, this is why it's an issue. These are some of the options that we've been thinking about, and everybody receives that before they arrive. And then there's guidance on,
and it's 6 pages
6 pages
for every meeting.
It would stop the unnecessary.
It's unnecessary.
I wouldn't have any meetings.
Well, into we would have meetings about a meeting that we're going to have like next month. So it'd end up being like 3 meetings in, and we've not even had a meeting yet. So what is this even about?
So they're definitely kind of lines of, if somebody knows they've got to write a 6-page report for me, they're not going to sit there and jump into a meeting
For no reason. Yeah.
But also, there's 6 people in a meeting leads into sort of good organisational design. And that's like the limit of how many somebody can manage, you know?
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. Effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Bill had 30 at one point. We had to figure that out.
Yeah.
That was a bit too crazy.
Yeah.
So, Amar, thank you so much for joining us. It's been brilliant. I've got a to-do list on what I'm going to now have to do for our leadership team. And if your leadership coach is going free, let's have a chat with her.
Shout out to Alison Hendry Butler.
So, does she want to be on the podcast?
She would be a great guest, actually.
Let's get her on. Alison, you're up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, mate, for joining us. Thanks, Ben, again for joining us. And thank the 7 listeners for listening. Come back next time.